Welcome back to another episode of the Wealth and Wellness Report today, guys. I've got Bill Porter here as my guest, and we're going to be talking a lot about entrepreneurship, business, fitness, family, all the things. Bill.
All the things.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to talk to you because, one, we've got a lot in common.
Yep.
You signed up Circle Foot to do a complete outdoor renovation of your homestead.
Yes.
And in that discovery, we learned so much about each other and, you know, the commonalities. You and I are both fathers. We run businesses. We use technology. And it just seemed like a natural occurrence for you to come onto the show. And like that way we can chat things up. And
absolutely.
I'd love to learn more about your Genesis story, and also for the audience, maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So born and raised in the Bay Area. Like you said, just kind of hit it off from the first referral over from my friend Randy, who similar boat, technology, kids, the whole background. So similar persona, and said, you know, you really have to talk Diego. He vibes well and has a business that will really help you, not necessarily just redo your backyard, but help kind of transform the energy as well. And that really hit home with me. He didn't necessarily go really deep into what you were doing. But it was great to have that introduction and really kind of hit it off. I think, so back to kind of, you know, overall, like I said, born and raised in the Bay Area, been in tech, entrepreneurship for the longest time, over 20 years, have done pretty much anything you can think of in a company and in the startup space. And have bounced around, big companies and small companies, all based on where I was at the moment in my life. And we can kind of get to that a little bit later, but, two boys now, 11 and 13. I call them mid-size, human beings now. They're no longer small. One's almost my height now, which is intimidating in and of itself.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think overall, very active, just a force function of having two boys. You have to get out there, and yeah, enjoy cooking, enjoy all the sports. Baseball is my favorite sport of all. But just enjoy getting out there and just living life.
So born and raised in California, San Mateo
San
County?
Mateo,
Cool.
actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Born in San Mateo.
Yeah. He's born in San Mateo.
Full on native.
A native. And I said to my now ex-wife, but wife, when we married, we moved to San Francisco, we started looking for our first house. I said, I'm never moving back to San Mateo, never moving back to San Mateo. Sure enough, moved back to San Mateo. But it was great. It was just right time, perfect housing fit, and just, it kind of worked out. And, I'm at that point where I don't feel like I'll ever leave.
That is a beautiful piece of property that you have in San Mateo on Baywood. It is in an amazing location. You know, some of the history we talked about of that particular piece of real estate being an old estate that kind of moved into probably several lots in that neighborhood, right?
Yeah, and I just lucked out learning the history of it. So it's the last house, whatever you want to say, right next to Hillsborough. And someone was walking by. We were doing a yard sale. It was one of the city yard sales, and just by sheer coincidence, this gentleman was walking by and stopped and said, "Oh, I happen to know the history of the hut, which was next door, which isn't really a hut. It's a Japanese, I forgot the actual name, but it's a spiritual house." And said, "Oh, I know the history of this entire plot," and went into, it was all one big property. Then it was subdivided for the kids, and then over time the kids ended up selling it, and then it ended up becoming different houses, and that it was all one big garden. And it was interesting, and I kind of alluded to this when I was talking to you. it was actually a koi pond. And when I started digging up in my first DIY renovation of the yard, which I'm glad I'm not doing this year time, there was these large chunks of concrete with polished rock. And I was like, I was wondering what this was. And this was before the conversation with this gentleman walking by. I was like, this was really mysterious to me.
Yeah.
But it made sense because it was the underneath, it was at least the finished product of the actual koi pond itself. But it was very odd, but it tied everything together. But it definitely brings things full circle, if you will, in terms of where the property was and where we wanted to head.
Learning after you had moved in, that whole story, right? It wasn't part of the, romance of the initial acquisition. And a lot of the audience actually is really focused on real estate, whether it's investment, homesteading, improving properties, making them better than they inherited it. How was that whole experience for you moving into that homestead with your family? Love to hear that quick little story. And if there was anything that you'd be willing to share that could be a lesson for folks going through their first purchase.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things that I've learned in terms of evaluating and ultimately purchasing houses, this was the second purchase I've had the privilege of being able to go through. It is really finding a spot that fits not just where you are in the moment, but where you envision yourself moving down the line. And it's a balance of where you are, both economically, physically, mentally, and really where you aspire to be. Far too often I see, especially in my family, and where you get to the point where you call it a starter house or whatever you want to see, where you hear that you're outgrowing your house or getting to the point where it's not functional. And then you get to a point where you either have to make major changes or you sacrifice some sort of give and get, right? And when I say that, I don't mean in terms of size, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be a size thing. Like you don't have to get, when I'm not saying, it has to be X number of square feet, or I'm thinking more, and I'll give you a perfect example of this specific location. It was about school districts, more important. Younger kids, they were early on, still in daycare. One was just about to get to kindergarten. Thinking about school districts was one of the priorities. And on top of that, a luxury was being able to walk downtown. So it checked some boxes on that front. Yeah. Now, forward thinking, it's mostly one story. So, okay, when I am not able to walk upstairs, that's a good thing. But in terms of the forward thinking, it wasn't necessarily, I need to have X number of square footage or whatever it may be. It was for the kids, okay, their education, first and foremost. Then from there, then there were the other intangibles of, I want to go to dinner. I don't want to have to park downtown. So there were some luxury items, but the core of it was rooted in, a growing family. What are the priorities there? Yeah. In terms of education, in terms of even the walkability of the neighborhood itself, right? A quiet street. So the kids, I could put the basketball hoop up and be comfortable with the kids playing in the front yard. Yeah. That kind of a mentality. So it was really, the search started and ended with the family focus.
And were there other properties that you were looking at?
Oh, absolutely.
I'm sure that were up on the list in terms of which ones to place offers on.
Absolutely. This was, the Bay Area market is very isolated, I feel like, in beyond, I would not going to say the rest of America because that's there's bubbles. But I'd say the rest of even Northern California, where it's always there's these cycles, there's micro cycles, but for this one specifically, there's always going to be demand.
Very competitive,
at least from property value, hopefully. there was Burlingame all the way down to St. Carlos. There were these different individual pockets, but same thing, good communities, good schools, like just looking for those kind of 4 to 5 punch list items. And it was just there. And we just had the checklist. Was it a good school zone? Was it a family friendly area? How did it really resonate with at that point, the 4 of us? Was it somewhere where the kids could bike around? Little things like that.
Yeah.
And, to a certain extent, did I know anyone roughly in the neighborhood? Being someone from the area, I knew quite a few people. So did I know someone within a walking distance that could be kind of someone I could lean on a little bit when I would need
community,
quite literally a cup of sugar or whatever, right?
Yeah.
That kind of old school mentality.
For sure.
Yeah,
for sure. That's awesome. What were you doing at the time in terms of work? Were you running a business? Were you an employee or a staff member of a business?
At that time, I was working for a company called Aptera. We were relatively small. We were a team of, I think, about 20. We grew pretty large. I was there for a long stint. I was there for about maybe 6 years. This was a really fun moment in my career, and one that will age me quite well. We ran a business that actually fueled the advertising for AOL movie phone.
Okay.
So back in the day when you actually call a phone number to actually hear the phone, the movie times.
Yeah. I remember that. Was that Fandango?
Fandango. That was one of our clients as well. We would be the ones that interjected all the ads. Gotcha. My first just stint in the company was actually writing the ads, cutting the ads, going and getting the voice talent, stitching everything together and putting the ads into the system. It was really fascinating.
Yeah.
And then over time, learning the analytics, understanding which ads performed better. And that really got me thinking and going towards the more performance driven marketing. And that was an interesting time. And then lo and behold, over the years, these things called mobile apps started coming up. It's just flash in the pan and no one's ever used a mobile app. But now, they're everywhere. And we said, okay, there's 2 tracks. We can either keep doing what we're doing and die, or we can try to do something and adopt. So we ended up building a couple mobile apps, learning on the fly. We ended up developing 2, I think, really interesting mobile apps. And ended up getting acquired by Boston Consulting Group over towards the end of our stints. And then from there, went to a corporate gig. So talking about ebbs and flows, went into a corporate gig when the kids were a little bit older. But yeah, that was a really fun. I think that was one of the best teams that I worked with, and one of the longest tenures I've had.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So your tech background goes before Aptera. Did you go to school for software or engineering, or how'd you get in the space?
Like any good tech entrepreneur, I was a journalist background.
Oh, interesting.
I wanted to be I wanted to be a newspaper writer.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I wanted to write for any. I wanted to be a sports writer. I actually wrote for the student newspaper. I'm not sure if I guarantee they still won't have any of my stuff back. And I'm sure they have in the archives in the school, but no, I started in journalism, and I did a few, sports broadcasting things through the school. I did a whole bunch of writing stuff. And when I went out to find jobs, there were none. It was a dying industry, dying art. And I had 2 options. I could try to hang on to the last kind of shreds of what I thought would have been a career, or I could have to go to a Star Wars metaphor, join the dark side. So I went into PR, and it was the yin and yang of the journalism PR. I went into PR and started there, and then circled back quite a whiles later, and did more in PR, but PR then kind of bounced around a bit and across a variety of things. But I started in journalism as a way to.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Another commonality that I did not know we had. I, for many years in my early 20s, wanted to be an investigative journalist.
Okay.
Like somebody who goes out there doing due diligence and asking hard questions on really hard topics. At the time, it was all around September 11th, terrorist attacks, the Patriot Act, this shift in government, and how everything was changing geopolitically.
Okay.
And at that point in my life, I was like, I got super deep into that, like investigative journalism. I thought that would be like an amazing career. But then shifted. Sounds like just like you. What was the bridge? What took you from PR to technology? Were you doing PR for a technology company and then decided like, oh shit, maybe I should do this?
It like anything in life, part intuition, part necessity, a lot of luck. I mean, it's some of it's some's force function. When I was making $10 an hour and realized I needed to make more than that as an intern. So started applying to jobs, and some of the easier things to get to were ad tech in sales, and started applying and found a gig in affiliate marketing. And I mean, affiliate marketing essentially is a glorified term for sales. I mean, you're essentially doing ad tech sales kind of a thing. So that was kind of a way in. And my whole mentality from day one with companies in general is give me a way in, give me an opportunity. Very similar to any sort of athlete, any sort of kind of scrappy mentality of give me a shot and I'll prove myself. And that's still to this day, I think holds true. And that's something that kind of going to kind of the fatherhood parenting side, that's something that I want to ingrain in my boys is get into the dance, figure out a way in, because showing up and being present is a big part of success. And kind of going back to what we were talking about, a lot of what drove my career changes, and even just that switch from PR into kind of the marketing tech side, for that one specifically, it was finding the right company and finding a really cool opportunity. And they offered me more than $10 an hour and actually health insurance, which was a big thing too.
Yeah.
So, and again, necessity and kind of all these things that kind of bundle into one, where you get to the point where you make these choices where you decide and you go.
Yeah. That's interesting how the universe will sprinkle a little bit of magic dust on your hard work and effort. And then you, along with the universe or God, together kind of co-create the next set of steps.
Right.
And I think a big part of entrepreneurship is just taking that step,
right?
That first step, even though you might be in Thule fog, you don't know what's in front of you, but you have to take that first step. Right. And I think about that scene in Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade, where he finally gets to that last obstacle. And it's this massive gap between the next, like where the chalice is, or, where, the Knights of the Templar are. And it's all about faith. So he has to sit there and he has to believe. And then he throws the sand onto this invisible bridge and it emerges. And then he goes after it.
Yeah.
I think entrepreneurship is a lot like that.
Oh yeah.
Where you have to just believe undeniably with full devotion that what you want to see happen in life will ultimately happen.
Right.
And I really love that part of your story, because when you play sports and when athletics are a big part of your life, that like hard grinding, activity like trains your brain and your body. And you've got this like super integral connection between mind and body that you won't get anywhere else. Like you can be a bookworm all day long, or you can just be, doing something completely different that's not physical, right. And you won't have that grit and that grind that you really need in entrepreneurship and starting businesses and working with teams, especially when working with teams, because you've got multiple individuals and you're collectively working on a common goal. And if you don't know your role, or if you don't know how to engage in a team arena or scenario, then, I think there's a lot of, challenge and friction that will ultimately occur. And then you're probably going to find yourself doing something else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like flipping burgers or working at Target, or worse, like being somebody's, like working on somebody else's dream instead of working on your dream. And I think a big reason why I've started this podcast and the show is to help inspire entrepreneurs, inspire people who are really, really active in creating or co-creating that dream that they have, or that ultimate goal, and really getting into the fulfillment and the contentment of it. Yeah. Because I think they're hand in hand, man. Like when you do something that is of service, it ultimately fills the cup of the soul, in my opinion. So when you got out of, these other roles and began to have some more autonomy in your day to day, working on businesses, working on homestead, like what was like, was there another catalyst or another spark that got you to that next level? Like where were you in your career at that point? And was there something more that you were looking for, that you needed or you wanted to see in your life?
That's a really interesting question. I think it's one of those moments where I feel like I was always trying to go for something. You get to a certain age and you start, I think, not necessarily, let's call it, aggressively hunting for things. You start almost protecting. And I think it was, when you start having children, and shout out to all the mothers who actually have the children, that's a yeoman's work and everything. I think having boys, girls, just having kids, there's a switch. And when I say like pulling and protecting, you start getting to this teaching mentality, and it changes the perception, not only of you as an individual, but it changes how you perceive work too, and your career path, what you want to build, where you go in terms of a career, the next job, the next opportunity. The companies that I've been at and been able to help start and grow have really been around people that I've met in prior companies now, and people that I'm comfortable with, and people that I enjoy being around, and people that are similar and have similar connections. And that's not a fluke. It's a byproduct of not only having a longer career, but wanting to show and teach not only just myself, but the kids that okay, if you work in a team environment and you work with people that you like, you could do whatever you can or whatever you want. And that mentality. And sure, you are going to hit moments where you fail. And that's another life lesson, but we'll get there in a second. But no, I think that switch in terms of getting to a point where you're not necessarily hunting and pushing and finding the next cool thing and finding the next entrepreneur that you have to follow and be like, and like aggressively pushing and hunting. I wouldn't say content, because I'm never going to be content. It's more of I would say I'm trying to find the right word, but a mentality where you are switching from hunting to teaching and embodying this ethos of really kind of connecting with the people around you. Yeah. And that does come into play when you do have these mid-sized humans around you.
Yeah. And well, that's actually beautiful. Because at that stage you become a master, where everything rather than you are extroverted and you're going after, looking for it, looking to search this journey, things come to you,
right?
You attract it, and it's the way.
And it's a hard thing to articulate, which is why it took me a while to get there, but it's a hard thing to even understand. Because I definitely chased jobs. I chased I chased opportunities. I started a company with someone who I should never have started a company with, and it flopped within 9 months. And it was one of those moments when, my spidey senses were tingling, and
you did it anyway.
I did it anyways. And it was a flip of a coin, and it was a risk reward that I totally own. But I in hindsight shouldn't have done it. Now, lessons learned, retrospect, all of those things, like you could say there were people I met, connections I did. If I didn't do that, there would not be the next stepping stone, all of those things that you can intrinsically say. But that was a hunt, and that was something that I pushed. If that opportunity came to me today, I would not have taken it. Right. Those types of things.
Yeah.
So I think that sort of a switch is something that when you start developing, you start teaching that, and you start getting that to not only your employees, but to anyone who, like when I advise companies, or even I start mentoring individuals, you start trying to help them guide through where their career is going or where they are personally. And that becomes a huge, I think, personal pride thing for me, an accomplishment of, okay, here's where you are, here's where you need to be, and let me give you those kind of battle scars of what you can do and learn from where I was.
Yeah. The shift from hunter and gatherer to cultivation,
right?
And you are actively cultivating and creating the opportunities, right, rather than going after it and hunting it or gathering it like squirrels and nuts. What sort of rituals or practices or other modalities have you engaged with to further cultivate this well of opportunity and fulfillment in your life?
I think we are all creatures of habits, and sticking to a kind of a wellness routine has been huge. There are times in my life when I haven't had those routines. So a big part of my, call it every day, is sticking to a somewhat balanced routine. Waking up when I have the kids, getting the kids out the door, doing some sort of a physical exercise, going in, doing the day job, taking a break in the afternoon, whether it's with the kids, picking them up from school, doing something, typically getting back online, doing the day job, or, doing something for either one of my side projects or something. And then having more family time. Cooking has been a big thing. But trying to not necessarily live in chaos. Having a structure has been very helpful. It's something that is hard to live without. There have been definite moments in my life where I've been living in chaos, and it breeds, and it gets to the point where it shows in everything you do, and it shows up for spouses, it shows up for children, it shows up for employees, employers, it shows up for everything. So I think part of it is the routine. The other part of it that I find very, I think, rewarding is always having at least one, call it, new hobby. Recently taken up jiu-jitsu. Crazy, I think, but fun. As some sort of a baseline, I started, and I was able to, one of those life moments of do Taekwondo and progress through Taekwondo with my boys and get our black belts together in the same kind of cohort, which was a very proud moment. But starting, I'm only a couple weeks, months into jiu-jitsu. It's been really interesting because there's something about starting and doing something new that just triggers the brain and just keeps you active.
New neurosynapses.
Exactly. All of those things. And there's something that's really interesting, and it's like a mind body connection, right? So, every cell in your body over time regenerates, right? So, some of them on the cellular level are quicker, right, or faster to regenerate than others. But every 7 to 10 years, your entire body regenerates, right? That's just an interesting fact, because if you just pause and just think about that for a second, you are a new person every 7 to 10 years. Now, on a very kind of higher kind of philosophical level, we are also going through these 7 to 10 year, call it emotional cycles as well. We are not the same person that we were 10 years ago. You could call that whatever it is, but I've read multiple things that and I feel this too, every 10 years, you kind of go through these evolutions where you are a totally different person. And, maybe you could tie that to the cellular level. You could tie that to a spiritual level, however you want to do that. It's a really interesting way of kind of looking at that and reflecting on it, where you get to the point where you become this new person, you embody this new person. And in that, part of that is continuing to evolve and continuing to learn. And I like pushing myself on those new things. And I will continue to do that. Now you can do the extreme of like, I'm going to do 5 different things in the same day. And then you start getting into the chaos theory of, okay, I'm going to learn all these things. Then you forget everything. Yeah. But 1 to 2 things of new on every given week, month, every 6 months, I think is healthy. Yeah. So finding that balance.
It's huge. And you hit it right on the head when you talk about balance, structure, a regiment, a program. So I know a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of business owners who prioritize their business. They prioritize the chaos.
Right.
They've got fires everywhere, and they need to make sure they can get to all of them, as many of them as possible in any given day. Something that I personally learned through establishing a regiment of health and wellness, and prioritizing my fortitude, my mind, body, and soul first, ironically, helps the business side of things.
Yeah.
I've learned so much in the last couple of years that by moving my energy and my efforts more into the health and wellness space of Diego, it's going to transcend and completely transform, mobilize business and all of this entrepreneurial endeavors that I have into like the next stratosphere, which I was so scared of doing, Bill. For the longest time, I was like, I got to prioritize my business. I got to prioritize this. Like, I'll take care of me later. I got to take care of the kid. I got to take care of my wife. I got to take care of everybody else first.
Right.
Because otherwise I won't be able to pay my bills or pay the mortgage on time. You know, it was such an external experience. But then when I went back inside, and I talked about this on a previous show, because I fully believe that entrepreneurship is probably the best vessel to jump in to learn the most about yourself. Even as agriculturalists or farmers or anybody out there who's cultivating the land, the ultimate goal isn't of creating the produce, creating the product, creating the service, or creating any of that. It is creating a strong and abundant self. And to do that through business and entrepreneurship it's just, in my opinion, is the way. A lot of people don't do it.
Sure.
Because of how hard it is.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't get into health and wellness or fitness because of how hard it is. But I saw this really, really amazing meme the other day on internet that was like, whoa, okay. Guy is like running up a mountain, and the quote said, "The road to heaven is hell." And he's sweating and he's perspiring, you know, it's just in total pain. And then below that was a guy on the couch eating McDonald's and just being comfortable. Yeah. And it said, the road to hell is heaven, or something like that.
Sure. Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, that to me totally resonated, because the moment I shifted all of my efforts to creating my best self, Diego 10.0, everything else changed.
Right.
It was miraculous, and how fast it happened. Dan Martell, who I like to follow quite a bit, he's also a SaaS entrepreneur, and an amazing fitness athlete guy, entrepreneur. Used to say, because I would coach with him, and he used to say, you know, the tighter you have to cinch your belt, the fatter your pocketbook, or the bigger your wallet. You know, and when I first started with him, I was like, you know, that's sounds cliche. Sounds like you know, like a coach would say. But then I really took it to heart and I actually did it. And I was like, wow, okay. Like the abundance began to really flow into my life. So I think investing in your physical self is huge. There's another component to this, though, that is external, that I think is a reflection or a mirror, and that's transforming your physical space or your environment.
Absolutely.
What sort of, and I know you've engaged us at Circlefoot to do a bunch of work at your homestead, your space, your sanctuary. How important is it for you to transform that physical space at your home, and why?
Yeah. You know, that's a great question. I think, you know, as we've talked about different cycles in life, right? I think, having gone through a divorce, coming out the other end, this is a new phase in life, a phase in life for me, a phase in life for my boys, a chapter, if you will. And, this phase comes with a blank slate, if you will. And much like what the yard looks like now, which is just a blank slate of dirt, it comes with opportunity, right? So you could look at it both ways. You can look at it as all the negatives. You can look at it as the positives. You can look at it, and I'm not in reality, it's not a glass half empty, glass half full. It's a blend, right? Mm-hmm. The onus on change, I think, and the evolution on where we are and where I am in the change of the house is really a starting off and changing that foundation of, okay, here's what we're going to do for the next chapter. And it starts with the boys. Is I want them to have a space where they can come home to every day, or every other week when I have them, and feel comfortable and feel like this is their home. So, and same for me. And this goes beyond them, where I get home and I want it to be a new chapter, where all the memories can be created in a unique environment. Part of when we started talking about the yard, and how I envisioned it, was I wanted to be an entertainment space, large family, want to be able to host and have dinners and be the spot where the boys bring their friends over and play and have fun. So it's really the starting point of the updates and the changes, both inside the house and outside of the house, is the new chapter in our lives. And you can kind of sense the emotion that's coming through. That's genuine. And it's something that, it's every cycle, if you will, is one that you embrace, right? It's not something that's good or bad, or you just, every cycle you have to own as an individual, as a father, as a husband. You own it, you do the best you can. So that's part of this, is just doing the best we can. And yeah, I think it's going to look amazing. I think everyone should use your business.
Thanks, man.
But no, I think the change, the fundamental kind of push was really around getting a comfortable space for the boys and I for that next, call it, cycle in our lives.
When we first met, or we were having our first initial conversations about your project, that story really resonated with me. Yeah, because I think a homestead is a testament to legacy, to the long term, raising kids, having a family, cultivating the land, cultivating the home and the hearth. That all is a big part of who Circlefoot is. Yeah. And I think it's not any coincidence that we have met. Yeah. Because the work that Circlefoot does generally tends to attract folks like you. Yeah. Whether or not it was through our marketing campaigns or the universe. Yeah. But I think it's a really cool part of watching this company grow and evolve over time. It just having like it's like when your son starts riding a bike for the first time without training wheels, Absolutely. You're just like really proud, and it feels really, really good. This show is about, it's titled The Wealth and Wellness Report. Yeah. What does true wealth mean to you, Bill, as you move into this next chapter in your life?
You could look at it many ways. The fundamental way I look at wealth is freedom. Is the ability to really own what you are doing. And what I mean when I say that is being able to make choices, like being an entrepreneur, like being able to tell or have your kids go to a summer camp, or being able to let them go and play a sport, right? And empower them to have equipment to play a sport. Those are all, I would call it, that's all wealth. Now, some of that is tied to monetary wealth. Some of that is tied to physical wealth. So there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of quantify that. But all of that really ladders up into the ultimate thing, which I think is really just that kind of freedom, is that kind of ability to have that independence. I think that's kind of the rough idea. And then it goes from there, right? You can kind of break it down into the monetary angle, like I said, the physical angle of it. But it starts with that initial kind of bucket, right?
Yeah. That really hits somewhat of the same tune that Nicholas had mentioned when he was here on the show, because I asked him too, and it's interesting. You and him have a lot of similar characteristics or attributes, personality and stuff. He, answered it beautifully too. Wealth doesn't necessarily have to come in the form of money, as long as you have peace in the home and peace and love in your relationships, the well-being to get up and be an entrepreneur or, go to the gym. I thought about that this morning while I was in my training sessions. Like, I get to move my body like this.
Right.
I am so grateful that I get to do this, because not everybody gets to. What would you tell somebody who thinks they have or they don't have time to slow down or invest in their wealth or wellness regimes?
It doesn't have to take a lot of time. I would say, just like I was saying, and we were talking about, just start. It doesn't matter where, it doesn't matter when, it doesn't matter how. Start. Whether it's, quite literally 5 minutes of walking around outside, push-ups, sit-ups before you go to bed, wake up. It could be anything. Doing something, kind of like your meme thing, is better than nothing. And it's what I have found, and sometimes I take to extreme, is, physical activity is infectious, and I feel like that's in a good way. But I think when you're talking about habits, and you can take either side. Habits, just foundational change. When you start down the healthy path, you can kind of build on the healthy path really fast. When you start down that other path, the dark path, you could build on that really fast as well. So when you're talking about, okay, how do you start, or what do you do to say, I don't have much time? Just start. Yeah. It's really interesting. I'd say there's definitely been times in my life personally where I haven't been the healthiest. And those times I haven't prioritized myself. I haven't been there for my relationships. I haven't been there for the people that I care about the most. And I haven't shown up for myself either. And it's interesting because the way it shows up, the first realization that it's showing up isn't necessarily that you catch it, because you're so ingrained in either, call it, heads down into your work or into whatever emotion that you're in at that moment, that you get lost. And you don't realize that either you haven't been to the gym in however many days, or you haven't gone outside and gone for a walk, or connected with a friend, or whatever piece of the puzzle that you've dropped, or all the pieces of the puzzle that you've dropped. You only get that dopamine rush for whatever you're doing, right? And whether it's, drinking or overeating, or just all of those bad habits that can add up really quick. It's very interesting how just even starting those, again, same thing. You start down that path, you did a couple minutes of those, you can add up. So first one is starting whenever you could start now, start tomorrow, just build it. The other one is get that support network around you and keep it. So one of the things that I did, that I started during the pandemic was, it's like, I just started running with a friend. And this was kind of right around the time when I think the world was at its darkest, but I was at one of my darkest points in my life. And went outside and we ran almost every morning, as often as we could. And it was, it was very, jokingly say, cheaper than therapy. But we ran a couple miles and we chatted.
I think about that whole movie Forrest Gump.
Oh yeah.
And then I started running.
Oh yeah. If I could, I would have. No, I'm joking. Digressing. No, but it was good, and I think the network and the fact that I had him to rely on and to talk to beyond my partner, that was needed, and you need other checks and balances in your life. Other people to kind of help you through this journey.
Accountability.
If you don't have that, it's hard.
Yeah.
And I would say there should be multiple, call it fail safes, whatever it may be. Having that network is critical.
Yeah.
So in addition to starting, having a few people around you that will help you almost be your hype people, right? And go along with you on that journey is another, I think, piece that is important in this process.
Efforts compound, whether they're negative or positive.
Right.
And I fully agree. You can downward spiral, but you can also upward spiral.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to share today, Bill? Anything on your mind that you want to talk about?
I think, first off, I think it's, this is an amazing platform that you've built. I think this is truly something that you should be very proud of. The guests you've had, the lessons that you're embodying and kind of bringing into this community are just fundamental and very inspiring.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for having me on. I think this is very, I've enjoyed all of this.
Yeah.
No, I really think just fundamentally, when we start talking about just everything from entrepreneurship to raising children to just being part of a community, there's something to be said about just where we are as a society now and where I think we need to go. And there needs to be more discussions like this in order for it to continue to take shape. And I really hope and genuinely appreciate and really want this conversation to continue to expand. Because if not, we're going to run into a very, very, I think, difficult time getting the things back online. But yeah, I think overall, we just need to continue spreading the word and getting more people aligned with just continuing to grow a community. And this is how you build communities.
I fully agree. 100%. And the goal ultimately is for it to become cultural practice, right? Where we not only are talking, but we're also taking action and physically improving ourselves in our local communities. Something I'm doing near the end of every show now is a rapid fire question sequence. I've got a few for you. Starting with the first one. Considering you're in tech, what's your favorite tool or app right now?
Figma.
Figma.
Using a lot of Figma.
What's Figma?
So it is a online version of Photoshop.
Oh, cool.
So you can do a lot of design, and what they unlocked, which I think Photoshop didn't quite do, is it's very easy to share and to say, okay, I build a design, I could share it with you. You could design in parallel. You can do various different things. So when you're building, whether it's something for like a digital campaign, building prototypes for a product, you can do this virtually. You can do this wherever it is. And it's really, I think it's fascinating. So you could have a virtual team or a contractor, and you could share and you could do things rapidly, almost in real time.
Cool.
But I'm in Figma pretty much every day.
Noted.
Yeah.
All right. Next one is, where's your favorite place to recharge?
In my garage right now. So it's my gym.
Cool.
Just by coincidence. So I purchased a truck a couple of years ago, went to go park it in the garage, and it didn't fit. It was about a foot too long. So I had a whole space in the house that I couldn't park the truck in. So I ended up turning it into my personal gym. So that's where I go every morning. And that is the sanctuary, right? So I go, and that's my favorite spot right now.
So happy accident. Maybe.
Yes. Let's say it, yes, very much a design flaw. It's not a bug, it's a feature. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Book or podcast that shaped your mindset, or has helped shape your mindset?
Yeah. He's on this one.
Oh, cool, man.
Yeah. I genuinely mean that. I've been listening to a couple. The one of them that I'm reading right now, it's called Good Energy, and I'm going to blank on the author's name, but she's a Stanford doctor, PhD, who and you'll have to put in the show notes how to find this book. But, she stopped doing Western medicine and started doing holistic treatment of not just necessarily the symptoms, but actually the fundamental causes of how things were affecting her patients. And it's fascinating.
Amazing.
Going after everything from like just thyroid overeating to like actual, I would say, just like very kind of deep rooted illnesses. That book, as someone who's gone through a lot of cycles of very kind of, I'd say, spiritual, traumatic, whatever it may be, issues, just very interesting to see that you can take a very thoughtful approach to what you're doing and really, I think, attack things in a different angle.
I love that. Okay, last one. Legacy. Define legacy in one word.
Ooh, this is a good one to end on. I like this. Like my legacy, or just what legacy means?
How you define legacy, Bill? What in one word?
I'll stick with the same thing. Let's go with freedom.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say it. That's the first thing that came into my mind.
All right.
Yeah. Cool. Well, this has been great, Bill. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me.
Everybody, that's another episode of the Wealth and Wellness Report. If you like this episode, please be sure to hit the subscribe button below, add your comments, and we'll see you on the next one.